As a Tesla stockholder, I'm concerned with what Elon Musk says and does by default. The modest amount of money I'm able to save from my 9 to 5 will never be enough on its own to secure a future free from the shackles of endless corporate servitude. So, like many, I must endeavour to multiply my savings through prudent investments and side projects which we hope may one day take off. Tesla has performed well for me, and even with the current market downturn has proven an effective store of value. But there are other reasons for being on the Elon train. His recent freedom of speech crusade and potential acquisition of establishment echo chamber Twitter has elevated his already cult-like status to new heights amongst populist libertarian types. Elon is seen by many as the common man's billionaire, his ostensible positions on civil rights and human procreation setting him apart from his ilk, personified most starkly in the person of Bill Gates, whose enthusiasms lean in the opposite direction, toward authoritarianism and depopulation. So that's 2 big ticks in the Elon box for me. He's looking after my money and standing up for my human rights. What's not to like? Well, his relationship with the Chinese Communist Party does spring to mind. As a vehement opponent of this regime and everything it stands for, Musk's ventures in China have weighed on me ever since I began buying Tesla stock. Having spent the last 2 years rebuilding my mind and body after almost 2 decades of self-deception in the form of narcissistic drug and alcohol addiction, it is very important for me now not to indulge in hypocrisy. And if I am to be honest with myself, as I must if I am to avoid hypocrisy, standing against the vile abuses of the Chinese government while simultaneously backing a company owned by a man who regularly runs defence for Xi Jinping and his cadre presents a moral conundrum, to say the very least. There are numerous examples of Elon's tacit justification for what is arguably the single greatest threat to democracy and freedom in history. But a recent one drew particularly scathing criticism from Winston and Matt of the brilliant ADV podcasts, now known as The China Show, and really made me sit up and think. I've linked it in the description. Check out the clip at 1 hour, 21 minutes and 40 seconds. Winston and Matt are right. Elon has taken just one metric and presented it without context. China may well be leading the world numerically in renewable energy generation, but their continued rapid acceleration of coal power cancels out any effort they're making in renewables. Elon knows this. He's not stupid. And this makes his tweet a bad faith act of soft propaganda on behalf of the CCP. Personally, I'm not convinced by the climate change narrative. The science is not settled. And when any issue becomes as recklessly abused for political gain as this one has been, I become supremely sceptical about the motivations behind it. Whether our climate is changing beyond the normal cyclical variations across tens of thousands of years, and even if it is, whether human activity is causing it, has yet to be proven. And it is unlikely that it ever will be, even if the apocalypse does come. However, from a first principles standpoint, would it be better if there were fewer emissions from the burning of fossil fuels? Yes, I think we can all agree that that would be desirable. Although I have heard a convincing argument that man-made CO2 emissions are in fact currently driving a voracious regreening of the planet. I've linked this podcast in the description. There are countless other reasons to be enthusiastic about a transition to sustainable energy as envisioned by Elon Musk and Tesla. And my purpose here is not to make that case. Plenty has been said by much more capable people on this niche topic. Shout out to Dave Lee, Stephen Mark Ryan, and the Tesla Economist, all of which I've linked in the description. But data shows that electric vehicles will very soon be cheaper to make than their internal combustion engine counterparts. They are also safer because of their lower centre of gravity due to the placement of the battery, and fewer moving parts makes for less maintenance. EVs are also quiet. Imagine a world with no traffic noise. Also, have you driven or been for a ride in a Tesla? If not, I suggest doing so before passing judgment on the product. But all of this is beside the point. The fundamental question for the principled investor is Tesla's mission to transition the world to sustainable energy a good and worthwhile cause? I think the answer to this is yes. And so, as Tesla is a profitable company with a bright future, it makes sense for me as a sound investment. And Elon's liberty-minded political stance is the icing on the cake. But how liberty-minded really is a man who airbrushes the inconvenient truths about the Chinese government out of his tweets, obviously to stay in their good graces to ensure the ongoing success of his Shanghai operation? One might be moved to justify Elon's failure to speak up against the Chinese regime's most heinous crimes, most notably their ongoing genocide against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. After all, we're all forced to hold our noses and deal with China, unless you've somehow managed to avoid purchasing any common consumer goods for the last 30 years. One could even view Elon's silence on the Uyghur issue as simply a macro version of our own individual and collective complicity. Sure, you and I may speak up about the genocide, while hypocritically buying Chinese-made goods, but do we really have a viable alternative? Similarly, does Elon have an alternative to a China-based factory? If he really wants to transition the world to sustainable energy, that certainly must include China too. And maybe his view is that one must tolerate a great evil to do a great good. But as this latest tweet of Elon's shows us, he is not just failing to speak up against the Chinese Communist Party. He is actively promoting China's brand on the world stage, even going as far as to bestow on them the accolade of world leaders. His stance is not just ambivalent, it's sycophantic. Does this distinction even matter? Maybe not. Maybe the fact that he's doing business there at all means that if I were a truly principled investor, then I'd pull all my money out of Tesla. This is the Elon Musk conundrum. I like the product, I like the mission, and I like the man. But he does business with, profits from, and actively promotes a regime currently engaged in genocide. And this is to say nothing of his more worrying ventures in artificial intelligence and transhumanism, which many on my side of the political aisle feel are an absolute deal-breaker and more than cancel out what they see as his tokenistic and insincere platitudes about freedom of speech. What is one to do? It can leave you feeling a bit defeated. If the working man's billionaire is in fact a ruthless, unprincipled rogue like the rest of them, then what have we left to believe in? And perhaps this is the real issue. Needing something to believe in. Too often we put our faith in heroes, luminaries and demagogues. We are wired that way, to seek out grand narratives that simplify the world down to essential truths and make it easy for us to pick a side. But life is not that simple. And when we conceptualize it as such, we run the risk of becoming zealous, of adopting absolute positions on matters that are in reality nebulous and multifaceted. It is better to take the rough with the smooth. Few among us can afford to lead a completely principle-driven life, both monetarily speaking and in an absolute sense. Were I to fanatically opt for such an existence, I would very quickly find myself jobless, and were I to continue in such a fashion, it is likely I would end up in prison. Much can be learned from former radicals like Majid Nawaz on the problems with fanaticism, and how more can be achieved not necessarily from working within the system, but by weaving oneself throughout the system, sparring with it, existing both within and without, kind of like what Neo does in The Matrix. I am not a proponent of working exclusively within the system to change it. This inevitably corrupts. But nor do I see much use in adopting an absolute position of opposition. Perhaps one day the time will come for a full-scale revolution, but that time is not now. We still have options that do not involve boots on the ground and blood in the streets, but it means we must accept a certain amount of evil. Perhaps my favourite prayer is the serenity. I say it most days. It asks to be granted for the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I like this meditation because it acknowledges the eternal imperfection of existence. Through its utterance, we challenge ourselves to seek solutions not from without, in grand narratives and charismatic leaders, but inwardly, through our own limited agency, day by day. In acceptance of that over which we have no power, we do not absolve the prominent hypocrites or evildoers of their failure to change things, and nor do we absolve ourselves of the responsibility of fighting these battles. We simply acknowledge that the imminent solution lies beyond our immediate control. It then becomes a relatively simple matter of determining which actions that do lie within our immediate capability can begin to effect the change that we wish to be a part of. Taking the example of the Elon Musk conundrum, this process of evaluation might go something like this. Will selling my Tesla stock change anything for the better in China? No. Will continuing to buy Tesla stock change anything for the worse in China? No. The answer to both these questions is no, because I am an unknown person with very little influence. Next questions. What, if anything, can someone like me do to improve the situation in China? The only thing I can do is speak out and try to create awareness. How can I most effectively do this? By becoming more widely known. How can I become more widely known? By becoming financially independent so that I can focus all my energy on my writing and activism. Will holding my Tesla stock and buying more move me closer to financial independence? Likely so. Do I believe in the company's mission? Yes. Is there currently another stock or commercial opportunity for which I have such a high conviction? No. This pragmatic approach leads me to the imperfect but logical conclusion that I can potentially effect more change by holding my position in this company, regardless of my moral conundrum. Thus we arrive at the realization that Elon Musk's hypocrisy, or his insincerity, or indeed his possible malevolence is actually irrelevant. I can't change Elon's motivations, or what he says about the Chinese government. Nor can I change public perception of the Chinese government on a large enough scale to influence people like Elon. But I can change myself and my position in the world. I can work and build and grow, and maybe if I stick at it for long enough, I will become influential enough to help effect the larger changes that are currently beyond my control. It's a long shot, but it's all I've got. From a broader perspective, this logic holds true. The wisdom that allows us to discern between what we can and cannot change also dictates that it is futile to put one's faith in icons like Elon Musk. While we can take encouragement from his more libertarian actions, ultimately we have only our own industry on which to reliably bank. This is why, for now at least, I'm holding my Tesla stock. Not because I blindly believe in Elon, but because I believe it is a company with a compelling mission and a solid investment that will increase my net worth in the future. But I will also call out Elon Musk on China every chance I get. The same way I continue to pay my taxes, but march and protest at government vaccine mandates. The same way I record this on a Microsoft machine, but regularly call out Bill Gates for being a total creep. I prefer not to take absolute positions on things. Again, for now at least. The time for revolution may one day come, but until that day, I'll keep one foot in the real world and one in the Matrix. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to my Substack at jjdawson.substack.com. And if you'd like to keep in touch, please do follow me on Twitter at RealJJDawson. You can also follow me on Getter, Gab and Minds. And of course, if you enjoyed this, please do give it a like and share it about, because it really helps me out.